Yankees Files podcast. We are back. I'm Robert Harris. You're Robert Greaser. And the rest of you are fans of the only team that Pacoda projects to finish first in the American League East, because there can, of course, only be one. That team is, of course, the undefeated New York Yankees. It's a beautiful day in New York City. The Yukon Huskies are going to the Final Four. As of our recording of this episode, the New York Yankees have not lost a major league regular season baseball game this year, and everything is glorious. The Yankees, by the way, lead the American League in run differential. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. So a lot of people are probably tuning into this episode saying, who's Bobby Greaser and where is Steve? Well, we got some audience feedback, and the audience said, one Robert is not enough to have on this podcast. You must give us another. So I brought in Bobby to make a spot start in Steve's absence on this episode, and I think you will all be utterly impressed with his ball knowledge. Bobby, I always start this podcast by asking my co-host, how are you doing? So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I live in Chicago, and for the first time in a long time, it's an absolutely beautiful 70-something degree day in Chicago. We'll ignore the fact that it's going to be 45 on Wednesday, but I live a block north of Wrigley Field, and the energy in the neighborhood right now is popping. It's hard to get much better than that.
That's beautiful. So Bobby and I went to college together, and I will say that many times I was both intimidated and humbled by his knowledge of the game of baseball, something about which we were both very passionate. Bobby, it would be great to get to know you a little bit as a baseball fan. I've always known you as someone with respect for and knowledge of the Yankees, but you are, I believe, the first person who's ever co-hosted this podcast who is not first and foremost a fan of the New York Yankees.
Which is really an honor. Honor to be both the second Will on this show, or the second Robert on this show, but also
the second Will.
Yeah. My middle name is Will, so I also have that in common. But yeah, an honor to be the first non-Yankees fan to host. And it's sort of ironic, really, because actually to delve into my baseball fan history, it's impossible to do so without discussing the New York Yankees.
That's right.
For those who don't know me, I grew up in the Indianapolis area, but was born in Cleveland and have a lot of family ties to Cleveland. And so when people ask me today who I'm a fan of, I say that I am a Guardians fan. And I enjoy watching Guardians games. I definitely root for them to win whenever they play. I was devastated at the result of the 2016 World Series. But I think that my interest in baseball has always gone far beyond a single team and continues to do so. So I started my life as a Cleveland Indians fan, living in Cleveland. But my father actually always told me when I was young that the Yankees were our enemies as Cleveland fans. My father attempted to teach me to hate the New York Yankees. But I went through a phase as a child where, and I'm very much not this way today, but I went through a defiant phase, probably around second, third grade. And as a result of my dad's harping on, the evils of the evil empire and how they, discriminate against the small market teams like our beloved Cleveland Indians, I, loving the villain at the time, decided to become a New York Yankees fan, for no further reason other than to really piss off my dad.
That's so great.
And I was super into it for a very long time, actually. I think if you ask anybody who knew me throughout elementary school through really high school, I was a very vocal, outspoken New York Yankees fan. I played baseball through high school, wore number 13 because I loved Alex Rodriguez.
And later Joey Gallo, of course.
Oh yeah, my favorite new era Yankee. But yeah, I lived and breathed the Yankees for a long time when I was a kid. I remember watching the '09 World Series. I remember Hideki in Game 6. It was such a treat to stay up late and watch those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, really very thrilling. I had so much Yankees gear. Then I got older and sort of found myself shifting back towards the family ties to Cleveland and the Guardians, and have since considered myself more of a Guardians fan. I know I'm wearing a Cubs hat right now. I was walking around the neighborhood earlier and had to fit in. But throughout my entire life, baseball has been at the center of it all. I've always considered myself a student of the game, lover of its history. For a while, that involved a very passionate relationship with the New York Yankees. Now it's a casual relationship with the Cleveland Guardians, but a continued deep love for the game and loving to watch good baseball.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on, to have someone who knows the game as well as you do on the podcast. I think it'd be interesting, fans of this podcast, listeners to this podcast tend to hear from people who kind of think about the game in the same way. I think Steve, the typical co-host of this podcast, and even Whipple and I all think about the game kind of similarly. We take a very long-term view of how things might pan out. We pine for justice in results and harp on probability and the fact that everything just falls somewhere on a probability distribution and you can't really plan for anything except the median. Uh, we anticipate and celebrate regression when it serves us. We dread it and curse it when it doesn't. Um, and, we're very much devoted to what, people call nerd stats and things that make people tell us that baseball isn't played on spreadsheets. It might be interesting for you to walk us through how you think about evaluating a player or a team. What are the kinds of markers you look for as you're considering if a player is good or not? Um, what are your go-to stats for evaluating pitchers and hitters? How do you what helps you to draw conclusions about your assessment of a player, your expectations for a player?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Will. And I think the short answer is I probably don't deviate much on the macro level from where you and your co hosts typically stand. I've
Yeah,
had a statistical bent when it comes to watching baseball and appreciating baseball. You can ask my parents about little 12-year-old me toting around baseball prospectus and very early on in my life learning about warp and the
sure.
importance of OBP, read Moneyball very young. So I've always had an appreciation for statistics, and as somebody who's more quantitative leaning, have always really enjoyed viewing the game through the statistical lens. But I also appreciate being a fan who maybe appreciates the little bit more surface level as well. I think one of the most fun things that we can do as fans or as appreciators of sports is to get mad. And
Yeah.
a lot more fun to just get mad at a guy for striking out with runners on second and third than it is to be, well, he had a 15% chance to hit a home run here and pro level. Like, he's more likely to do so than Jose Caballero. Uh, but I digress. I empathize with those who aren't as interested in focusing and statistics and the large view because it's fun as fans to be mad. But personally, I sort of I think of the game a little bit in a closer way to you, Will,
Mhm.
where 162 game season, I think that numbers should color the way we think about the game very, very heavily. And it's just so cool and amazing how much more we know about baseball today
Yeah.
to how we did 15 years ago. I grew up pitching. And I absolutely love the art of pitching. I would love to teach my kids one day how to pitch. And I look
Would
back
you
and I'm,
teach him how to throw the grease piece?
oh, they would have they will have a dirty grease piece. As long
Coach Dad is going to teach them the
as
grease piece.
yeah, it's gonna have a nasty 11-5 break. Yeah, they're gonna be stars out there. But I look at everything that like we know now, and I wish that when I was a baseball player that I would have had access to this kind of understanding of the game that we're able to now. So I love all of the newer pitching models that we have coming out. I really enjoy looking at Stuff Plus and Location Plus for a pitcher, but I think especially Stuff Plus when it comes to acquisitions and how teams
Mm.
about their offseason. I think particularly as a Guardians fan, an organization that sort of prides itself on pitching development, maybe finding diamonds in the rough. I think, how we think about stuff and movement, maybe more so than just baseline velocity, is fascinating to me. I love looking at it and I like understanding why guys on the mound are successful and what those underlying key metrics are. But then on the hitting side, I think, a lot of the similar stuff as you. WRC plus, don't care as much about strikeouts
Yeah.
as maybe a fan 10, 20 years ago would. But again, at the same time, I get frustrated when a player with a propensity for striking out strikes out in a situation where maybe outwardly contact would be beneficial.
Well, the Guardians don't have anyone who strikes out, so it's fine.
Oh, and I can speak from experience that it'd be preferential if maybe they had a few more guys who did and put a wallop into the ball and haters.
Do you log for Franmil Reyes?
I really do, and he's killing it in Japan right now. And
Good for
there's
him.
definitely a part of me that yearns for his stateside return on the banks of the Cuyahoga.
I just, I actually heard that the reason the Guardians got rid of him is that he was encouraging his teammates to drink gasoline and become brave, and they didn't think that was a good idea.
Well, and especially nowadays for a small market team like Cleveland with this whole situation in the Middle East, the cost of drinking the gasoline would be prohibitively expensive.
It's such a shame that the secrets of Ted Williams are sequestered to the to the large market big spending teams. Only Steve Cohen can afford the gasoline.
Just another reason that we're going to have a lockout.
I wonder if even one person out there has read that article.
Well, if they haven't, I think that a link of some sort should be provided so we can sort of spread the gospel of the deep and just very important conversations that were occurring in the day between the splendid Splinter and Rosa Parks.
See, so I have said a number of times that I'm glad that we have the listeners to this podcast that we have, but fundamentally, I do this podcast for me. And there may be no better example of that than that last exchange. Yeah, man. Wow. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity we just took to get to know you as a baseball fan. And it is interesting to hear from a Guardians fan because the Guardians official account tweets like a guy I would hate.
They do.
Guards ball, exactly. I don't remember if it was before the 2022 or 2024 playoffs, but they had that tweet that was like, a lot of people around the country might not be familiar with the way we play. We put the ball in play. We play defense, all this stuff. And it's like, guys, maybe that's why you win 86 games a year and never beat anyone in the playoffs, is because like you're fundamentally incapable of scoring runs in bunches. And it's interesting and kind of refreshing to hear from a fan of that team that like you haven't been brainwashed into believing that all that stuff is actually good.
No, not at all. And I think that you can't look at the success of the Guardians without looking at it through the lens of living in the AL Central.
Yeah.
just an entirely different environment than certainly what the Yankees face, but
Mhm.
also our friends in the AL West. I mean, I think it's pretty without debate that the AL Central is the worst division in the sport. And I
Yeah.
applaud the Guardians for the success that they've been able to achieve with the alleged financial constraints and the at times anemic offense outside of Jose Ramirez, who astoundingly just keeps on every year leading the offense to some sort of production. But yeah, I mean, it's really not a fun brand of baseball to watch either. Most of the time, I think it's funny that the account can push it as a fun brand of baseball when there's maybe chaotic things going on, and to what some fans is maybe fun, like bunts, good defense. But at the end of the day, throughout a 162 game season, it's a lot less fun to be losing games 2-1 regularly
Yeah.
or 3-2 and leaving what few runners you do get into scoring position on base because top down, you just don't have the kind of power production that the other like elite offenses in the sport have. So I commend the front office for working with the cards they're dealt. Power's at a premium. I understand that Edwin Encarnacion was a long time ago, and there's not going to be another signing like that to come through Cleveland in a while. But it's certainly more fun to watch your team hit dingers. And so I think that Yankees fans should appreciate that. And I do not wish guards ball upon them, as sort of charming and unique as it can be.
I often wonder if the reason that some people find that brand of baseball or imagine that they would find that brand of baseball charming is because it harkens back to a style of the game that they can relate to having played. Like even at the Division 3 level in college, the run scoring meta is just so different from what we see in the major leagues. And fundamentally, the value associated with any given outcome is different and the likelihood of any given outcome is different. Like if you're in a league where there are very few strikeouts and defenses aren't great and nobody can hit a home run, then obviously the ball in play is important. But that is not the case in Major League Baseball. And the fact that your high school coach told you that you were going to have to run laps if you struck out with a guy on third and fewer than 2 outs is really, frankly, divorced from what Trent Grisham does in that situation. And I think people really miss that. And you can see, you can do the analysis. Like the teams that are really good at making productive outs do not have better run scoring outcomes than the teams that aren't. The teams that hit for high averages, if you adjust for, slugging percentage, are not like all that much better than the teams that don't. Like it really there was an interesting article in Baseball Prospectus, I think it was last year, about how like slugging on contact is really the true thing to chase. And I
Yeah,
think we see that proven out time after time. But yeah, I mean it's all any offense should want to do is get guys on base and then get extra base hits. Like there's really there's it's not like there's this secret art that some teams have mastered where you beat the ball into the ground but it works. Like that doesn't exist. And in people convince themselves of it, especially last year in the postseason because of the success of the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays won, I think, one game in the playoffs in which they hit fewer home runs than their opponent. Like, even they were reliant on the long ball because it is the best thing. And that transitions me into something that I've been meaning to note on this podcast, but have been remiss in not doing so. A few weeks ago, I got a message from Taylor Jackson, to whom you, Bobby, are forever linked. And that is because Taylor Jackson is the inventor of hit ball over fence, which is one of the main Yankees Files bits. But the bit that is associated with is the world famous home run, which was, of course, inspired by your Twitter bio that called Twitter home of the world famous tweets. So you are forever linked to Taylor Jackson.
No, yeah, I mean, you have to question if my Twitter bio is still even accurate now that we're in the age of X. 'Cause it's welcome to my account on X.com, home of the world famous posts. But I'm happy that I could inspire Taylor, to come up with this charming phrase about the world famous home run.
So Taylor sent me a message a few weeks ago, and it reads as follows.
Hmm.
I dislocated my shoulder on Monday. Terrible experience. They couldn't get it back in without sedation. They tried, and that was awful. So they gave me ketamine. Also terrible. Went for a wild ride. Thought I was dead. Thought I was never alive. Questioned all existence, not just my own. And even in that moment, I think somehow I knew hitting home runs is still the best way to win baseball games.
I mean, without a question.
And I thought that was beautiful because it is as fundamental a truth as that you are here or I am here or that we're talking to each other. And no matter how much people want to deny it or call us nerds or say it doesn't work in the playoffs or whatever it might be, it is a fact. And it is the number one thing to pursue.
I've never thought about the lived experience part that you brought up earlier either. I really liked that about how
Interesting.
a lot of maybe the consternation that some individuals have around the thought process around maybe home run bad comes from their own experience playing or coaching. It's actually now that you had brought that up, I can totally see that as being a driver of what might lead some to think that. 'Cause I think to my own high school career, and that often was what was taught or preached to me, and that was probably good for the level of talent baseball player that I
Yeah.
was. Never going to be a Division One talent. I had a knack for hitting line drives to right field, but I was certainly not a home run hitter, and I probably would have been a significantly worse baseball player if I was.
Hmm.
Uh, I had never thought of that, but I think that actually does sort of get to the root of the issue for a lot of people, if I had to guess so. I think that was a good observation.
Thank you. And you can even, I think, hear it in the way that some big leaguers talk. And I don't know if they're pandering or, what they really believe, but, guys talk about being better when they're going to the opposite field, which is almost always false. Guys talk about doing the little things, which overwhelmingly are not more important than the big things. But I really think that there are these ingrained ideas that people have from their own experience playing a level of baseball that is in no way comparable to baseball at the professional ranks. And it gives them, yeah, it creates this lens through which they view Major League Baseball that completely ignores the run scoring situation or meta in which Major League Baseball is played. And as I said, you can see it if you look at any of the statistics. And then the other thing is people delude themselves into believing, oh, the teams of yore did these things. The 1998 Yankees were so good at moving the runner over. Like, okay, man. Okay, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even with teams that maybe on their social media outwardly claim to embrace that style of baseball, you can see that in the actual depths of the organization, philosophically, they know statistically like what the truth of the matter is. You can look at Stephen Kwan on
Yep.
the Guardians, right? I mean, he came up and he was a sensation. And I do love the way he plays. He's a great player.
He
But you can
is.
tell that Guardians player development department has encouraged him to sacrifice some of what made him good when he came up for a little bit more power and an approach at the plate that is a little bit more optimally geared towards what we know the best way to win a baseball game is.
Absolutely. And I also don't think the Guardians would prefer that Chase DeLauder play like Luis Ariz.
Absolutely not. No, it's been exciting to get a little bit of ball over fence energy from a Guardians outfielder. It's not something that we're particularly accustomed to.
No, it's been a little while since the days of Jay Bruce.
Yeah, I don't miss trotting Miles Straw out there.
Is there any The answer to this question is yes. I was going to say, is there any player that it's harder to root for than Miles Straw? And certainly there is, but there can't be many.
Yeah, I mean Carlos Correa comes to mind.
Yep.
Bregman. He's
Mhm.
a yeah. Altuve.
Jaron Duran, perhaps.
Yeah, you can go any amount of former Astros. I don't need to name them all.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys would all qualify
Maybe
for me.
Marcelo Ozuna too.
Marcelo Ozuna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's the class that he's in. So good for him. So Bobby, you know, the Yankees have only played 3 games. They've won all those games. I'm very happy about that. For the last few months, the conversation that has dominated this podcast and that will dominate this episode as well has been about appropriately setting our expectations for the 2026 Yankees. And I'd be interested to know, as someone who's very familiar with the team, but not necessarily a fan of the team, how did you assess, or how do you assess their offseason, the moves that they made and perhaps didn't make? And where do you see them stacking up in the AL?
Yeah. I understand that there's been a lot of frustration from parts of the fan base about a perceived lack of effort, maybe a perceived lack of pushing all the chips in. So I recognize that Yankees fans exist in a little bit of a reality compared to a Cleveland fan, where not having won a championship since 2009 is a failure, and having not won one in so long is a good reason to push all the chips in. And I think that that frustration, probably stems as well from a division rival like the Blue Jays doing things like signing Dylan Cease and like having that marquee offseason move to bring in a face that wasn't on the roster the prior year. So I think the frustration when you put it on paper is very understandable to me. But I understand that one of the most fun things about being a sports fan is getting mad.
Is being
being mad online it's a great pastime. I love it, and I can't blame anybody else for loving it too. But I think that it's important to recognize that a lot of the Yankees offseason also involved making investments in continuity on what was already a very solid roster that, keep me honest, Will, correct, led the league in run differential last year
I
and
believe they did.
continues to do so this year, as you noted at the beginning of
Yep.
the podcast. So I think like that context has to be understood to frame how one assesses the Yankees going into the season. They made investments to largely keep things the same, which on paper I understand can be frustrating given that last season did not culminate in a World Series appearance. It culminated in a World Series appearance by a division rival who went out and did add new faces. But I think that keeping the core intact means that the Yankees should be a great team on paper again. Now, like you said, projected winners in the AL East, according to Pacoda. But with that said, and this goes back to an earlier point that I made, I think that existence within the AL East does complicate things.
Definitely.
And last year's AL East, I do think that the floor is lower than like for like a 20th percentile outcome than where the Yankees were at last year, because I do think that others in the division have very, very similar talent levels. I think that the floor is lower than like for like a 20th percentile outcome than where the Yankees were at last year, because I do think that others in the division have very, very similar talent levels. I think that the floor is lower than like for like a 20th percentile outcome than where the Yankees were at last year, because I do think that others in the division have very reasonable upside
Sure.
compared to where they were last year.
Yeah,
Obviously,
Baltimore could be a lot better. Chance
yeah,
like the only team that I think is guaranteed to get worse is the Rays, and guaranteed is an extremely strong word there.
yeah, and you still never want to play the Rays. Like,
No.
be bad this year, but you know that they're going to be competent to a
Yeah.
certain, probably have some good arms.
Yeah. They
Boston,
had almost their worst imaginable season and they won 77 games.
yeah, exactly. I think you look at Boston last year, 89 wins, like
Mhm.
pretty solid season. They go out, they get Contreras, they get Sonny Gray, like not on
Ranger
paper, like
Suarez.
gigantic move with the Cardinals there. Yeah, adding Ranger Suarez, you're going to have Roman Anthony for a full year. I think that their rotation depth, top to bottom, is very impressive. I think that it's a clearly improved team. I don't see how Baltimore could be much worse.
Yeah, I
And
think they're going to get better. I'm a big Dylan Beavers believer.
I am also a Beavers believer. If they would only invest in some pitching, I mean, I guess they just gave Shane Baz that extension, but
Mhm.
I don't know how overly impressed anybody was with Shane Baz last year. There's some good underlying statistics behind him.
It's it's a cheap enough deal that if he's just like a little above average, it's great value. It's not like franchise altering by any means.
No, I mean, I think it was $68 million.
Yeah.
Doesn't work out, whatever. But I think
Yeah.
for the Orioles, the deeper issue is continuing to, you go out and spend a bunch of money on Pete Alonso, which talent is talent, great
Mhm.
player, but I don't know, somebody's gonna have to pitch. Uh,
Yeah. And
Obviously,
like
Michael
it
Elias
felt like
being like, "Oh well, we didn't know Kyle Bradish was gonna get hurt," and Grayson Rodriguez. Like pitchers get hurt.
yeah. It also felt like the Orioles they could have been kind of creative in the way that they addressed first base and done interesting things with the rest of the roster. And instead, they were extremely cookie cutter with the way they addressed first base. And they got a very good player, but then the rest of the roster was Taylor Ward, who I love, to be clear, but is not like a game changer, probably. And Zach Eflin and Shane Baz. Yeah, it's very weird to me. But like, I don't know. I was kind of hoping that there would be something fun with like, and also Jordan Westberg getting hurt again really sucks. I love Jordan Westberg. He's a really good player, and I would not be dealing with that well if I were a full-time Orioles fan. But I thought that they could do something cool with like Adley and Basayo and Kobe Mayo involving first base and then make an exciting outfield upgrade. Uh, and then, you have Gunnar and Westberg who are terrific, and you take the position that you believe in Jackson Holiday, and you really supplement the, you know, Cowser and company in the outfield. And it's not what happened. And maybe that player didn't move. Like, I don't think the Orioles were ever really in on Kyle Tucker. So I don't know. Like, I think they had to kind of do some different stuff. But yeah, it would have been fun to see them address things in maybe a more interesting way. It's also like, we went to that game in Baltimore where was it Heston Kjerstad hit the grand slam?
Yes,
Um,
was.
that was fun. And like that was a time in Orioles history when people were so excited because they had gotten the new ownership and it was like, now they're going to spend and this is going to be great. And here we are, and Adley hasn't been extended, Gunnar hasn't been extended, Westberg hasn't been extended. Like, it's just a very, and like they brought in Alonso, but they haven't brought in another big name. It's a very weird time, and it does feel a little bit like they're letting some of the incredible potential from 2023 wither on the vine, and that's a shame. It's good for the Yankees, but like the Orioles are probably the team I would like to succeed most after the Yankees, and I would love for them to succeed at the expense of teams like the Red Sox and the Blue Jays. And while I do believe there's upside, they have not really leaned into it in the way that I hope they would.
No, and it just shocks me that guys like Framber Valdez were sitting in free agency until February,
Mhm.
and it just wasn't something that Baltimore decided to pull the trigger on. Apparently, I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't a crazy deal to get him to Detroit,
No.
but all that to be said, I think that the Yankees front office did not do the wrong thing this offseason. I think that, bringing guys back who are on expiring deals was important to continue momentum from what was an awesome team last season. But I also think that optically, they've put themselves in a little bit of a precarious situation because I think that this is a division that is going to be stronger
Mhm.
than it was last year. And I think that there are more likelihood more likely scenarios where Baltimore, Boston, and Toronto could overperform expectations that would lead to a Yankees underperformance that would really, at that point, I think lead to serious questions from the fan base to the front office. So, do I think they did a good job? Yes. Do I think that they're walking on thin ice by not doing that proverbial chips all in move? Also, yes. Not to
I
say that
would
they should have, just that I understand that there could be some frustration if things don't break the right way this year.
I would note that the fan base always loves to act like they're asking serious questions of the front office.
Yeah.
I've asked this question to Steve, I've asked this question to my dad, and I'll now ask you this question. Is there any player that changed teams this offseason that you think the Yankees really obviously should have been in on?
I think that that's a great question. I don't know if there's a single player that I like immediately comes to mind to me that is like, yes, like this is somebody who needs to be on the Yankees roster. But I think that my go to answer would be, one of the sort of second level starting pitchers that
Okay.
provide rotation depth because I think that that's just valuable to any team. And I like the
Sure.
Yankees rotation, to be clear. I'm really excited about Cam Schlittler. Uh,
I was going to ask you about Cam Schlittler and Ryan Weathers as you're a Stuff Plus guy.
yeah, and I'm still not sold on Ryan Weathers on being a long-term starter or
Is
more of
it that he doesn't get whiffs on fastballs? Is it that he doesn't stay healthy? What's the Ryan Weathers
a
concern?
little bit of both. Yeah,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
and I just think that sort of like I think that they would have been better off to do a move like Suarez, like Boston did. I think
Mhm.
that pitching was already a strength for Boston, and it was something that they meaningfully added to in rotation.
Sure.
Because I think if there's one thing that we all know throughout a season, you can never have too much pitching, and especially with guys who are allegedly going to be coming back at some point, right? Cole, Rodon, like
Clark Schmidt.
yeah, it's never hurts to have another guy who can be another 2 to 3 in a rotation, and somebody who
Certainly.
you get to October, you're confident that there's somebody you can hand the ball to.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's fair.
What would most Yankees fans say? I think that their thought would be more on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think, Kyle Tucker is the first name that comes to mind. Um, but it's actually gotten kind of bizarre. Like, Yankees fans are mad that they didn't get, like, offensive depth. Like, not another really good bat. Like, there's a guy on Yankees Twitter who's been complaining that they didn't get Kazuma Okamoto. Like, that is just it's kind of weak to me. Like, I don't think there were too many people who thought they should really be in on Alex Bregman. I don't think he's a great park fit. But yeah, I think Kyle Tucker would probably be the main one. There's some people who think Anthony Volpe can't play shortstop, who think Bo Bichette can, that wanted them to get Bo Bichette. Um,
Steve Cohen showed what he thinks about Bosch Bichette playing shortstop. He's
exactly.
not going to be doing it.
There there were rumors about like Corey Seager, and everyone went crazy because Yankees fans are mad that Corey Seager's not on the Yankees. I think at one point there was a Mike Trout rumor that obviously had nothing to it. And like, yeah, I would say a lot of Yankees fans were thinking on the offensive side of the ball, which I think is very silly. There's a loud group of fans who think that Trent Grisham is just bound to be a terrible player this year, which I'd be surprised if you agree with them. I think it's entirely possible the Cody Bellinger contract doesn't age well. Like I'm concerned about that. But I think he'll be a fine player this year. Yeah, there are a lot of people who have convinced themselves that the offense that was clearly the best in baseball last year is somehow severely lacking.
Yeah, that's what sort of confused me because what you just walked through, I think, is sort of like from my high level view of Yankees Twitter was sort of the discourse when, I mean, they scored runs in
Yeah,
spades last. It was a good offense, so that's why my answer would be more on the pitching side
yeah,
because somebody's going to get hurt. You don't know how Cole's going to look. You don't know how Rodon's going to look. You're never going to be mad about having Ranger Suarez or Framber Valdez around.
yeah.
Like those are
Yankees fans have been mad about having Sonny Gray around, though. So
famously,
yeah,
yeah. So maybe now that he's in Boston, he'll return to his Yankees ways of what 5 ERAs.
yeah, I sure hope so. Yeah, that would be nice. Do you think the Red Sox can hit well enough to win the division?
I mean, I certainly think that the highlight of the team is the pitching depth. I mean, even
Yeah,
if you AAA, I mean, they have somebody gets hurt. They
yeah. Peyton Tolley comes up.
exactly.
Yeah,
But I do think that they will be able to hit well enough, and I think there's a nice amount of upside in what they've got there. I think after the first 3 weeks of his call up, Roman Anthony afterwards was among the better hitters in baseball. I
mhm.
think that Red Sox fans have good reason to be excited about how he looks this year. Wilyer Abreu, if he doesn't get hurt, could he take another step forward this year? Uh, Obviously, I think that they wanted Bregman back, and not getting Bregman back is a hole in their
Yep.
lineup. One they dealt with last year when he was injured. Uh, I think Contreras helps plug the big hole they've had at first base for a long time.
Yeah,
Not
he
with
should be good.
a elite hitter, but somebody who's going to come in and put up a somewhere probably between a 110 and a 130 WRC plus.
Mhm.
I think they've got the bats to be able to compete, and I don't think that there's much injury downside on the pitching side as there would
Mhm.
with some other organizations. Like I wouldn't see them having a situation like Baltimore had last year,
Yeah.
where two guys get hurt and it's like, well, here's Brandon Young
uh,
or Cade Povich.
Cade Povich. I think Therese was at Cade Povich's debut.
That is definitely probably a memory she'll hold dear for the rest of her life.
And I'm also pretty sure that Grayson Rodriguez has a 0 ERA in games I've seen him pitch in, which is crazy.
Well, we'll see how many Angels games you go to and
Exactly. I
if he's pitching in them.
I fear there's not much pitching left for Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah. I was high on him too.
Yeah. Yeah. He was only good if I was there, as it turned out. Did you catch much of the Yankees Giants series over the past weekend?
I was watching the opening day on Netflix, and I mean, I thought as a whole the series was very encouraging for the
Mhm.
Yankees from top to bottom. Not that I mean the Giants are like the most 81-81 team of all time.
They are.
Not that they're the most imposing opponent, but I think if you're a Yankees fan, you got to be encouraged with what the offense did against Logan Webb in Game 1, and in all 3 games. I think you've got to be encouraged what you saw from the pitching staff. Cam Schlittler was great, and I think really the bullpen was standout in all three
Did you
games.
see Camilo Doval?
I was about to say that I've always really enjoyed Camilo Doval, and obviously he's been a little bit of an erratic player, highs and lows. But I think that he could be really great in the pen for the Yankees this year.
Yeah, he was doing just disgusting things between the sinker and the slider, but the sinkers that he was throwing were just Oh my
Uh, and
goodness.
we can't discount that this was a Camilo Doval revenge series.
It was. Yeah, we'll have to see when he doesn't have that extra juice,
Yeah,
what he's got for us.
yeah, but Bednar was great. I mean, the
Yep.
bullpen definitely looked like it would be a strength
Yeah.
from 3 games, and so I think you've gotta hope that that continues. It was a great series.
It was. Yeah, I was very pleased. What Yankees position player do you think you are higher on than the consensus of fans?
How high would you say that the consensus of fans is on Ben Rice?
I would say the consensus of fans who know ball are fully sold on Ben Rice as like, a potential top 20 hitter in baseball.
Yes, I think that that's my answer.
Yeah.
I am Ben Rice. I think you gotta love what you saw last year. I think what I'm most interested in from him this year is if he's given significant opportunities to play without a platoon advantage,
Mhm.
how that looks for him.
Sure.
Uh, I believe was it the second game of the series he didn't start.
Correct.
They put had Goldschmidt was in over him, right?
Yeah, and they attributed that to the fact that they're facing like one lefty in the first 9 games, so they were hoping to get Goldschmidt and Rosario and Yankees legend Randall Grichuk into the game. Um, just because they, didn't expect to see much action in the first 2 weeks at all. But that was actually something that got Yankees fans pretty riled up. Um, was the fact that Ben Rice did not play in that game after the Yankees had expressed interest in getting him more plate appearances against lefties than he had previously. He did have obviously Ben Rice is an ex-Woba monster, so this isn't the craziest stat, but he did have a 324 ex-Woba against lefties last year. Like it wasn't like he was unplayable, and I do think he showed some good signs. But yeah, I mean, the tension there is you don't bring back Paul Goldschmidt to not do anything.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just
So
veteran leadership in the clubhouse.
perhaps.
Yeah, but Ben Rice is my answer because I really think that he could establish himself this year as the second banana to Aaron Judge in the Yankees lineup in a way that probably nobody has in the power department since the last healthiest iteration of Giancarlo Stanton. I guess he's done that on and off depending on health.
Yeah, I
And
mean Juan Soto did have a 40 homer season.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I
yeah, and then Stanton was terrific last year, which was really exciting. We'll see, how much of that he can roll into this year. But I think you're exactly right. I think if you had to pick a second Yankee to have a 150 WRC plus or better, you'd be wrong not to pick Ben Rice.
yeah, and I'm excited to see it because I think that for whatever reason, I mean, I guess the reasons are somewhat clear, but I feel like he doesn't have the national brand recognition
Mhm.
of a potential star that we would expect a potential star Yankee to typically have in terms of just does the average ball watcher know who you are?
Yeah. When he hit 3 home runs on 4th of July weekend against the Red Sox in 2024, I was like, "Oh, this guy is awesome." And then he was the unluckiest and worst hitter I have ever seen for the rest of the season and didn't play in the postseason. But man, it hit like crack when Ben Rice was great last year, and I too am eager to see him do even better.
And I'm even happier that he has catcher eligibility in fantasy baseball,
That
even if
is big because I don't think he'll retain that for long.
no, I do not expect him to be wearing the tools of ignorance with great frequency for the rest of his career.
I used the phrase tools of ignorance the other day, and I was so happy I got to say it because it's not something I say nearly enough. And I'm so glad that you said it.
Just one of those good baseballisms that, you hear it and you can't help but smile.
It sure is. So the Yankees begin a series on the road in Seattle this evening. For my money, these are the two best teams in the American League. I completely understand what you had to say about Toronto, but I got to be honest, unless George Springer finds a way to keep cheating like he was last year, I think he'll take a pretty significant step back.
I foresee regression from Toronto. I'm higher on Toronto.
Yeah, I think, Bo Bichette is a bigger loss than people are giving it credit for, given the way his market kind of came together and his start to the season with the Mets. Like, I trust some of their pitchers a lot and some of their pitchers not at all. And yeah, so anyway, for my money, the Yankees and Mariners are the two best teams in baseball, and the Yankees are immediately going on the road to Seattle, which is always a brutal series. And of course, they're facing Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, and George Kirby, which the only positive thing you can say about that is at least they don't have to face Brian Wu. I'll ask you two questions about this. First, long term, how do you think the Yankees and Mariners stack up? Second, what is the most significant conclusion any fan should even consider drawing from the result of this series, whatever it is?
Well, to answer the first part, I think that I agree with you that if I were putting together a sports book, I'm not sure in which order, but I'd probably have the Yankees and the Mariners as my two favorites in the American League.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to like about both teams. I think that the Mariners are probably, for my money, the most fun team in baseball this year.
It could be.
I'm looking forward to watching them. Looking towards the series, as I alluded to earlier, I love great pitching matchups, and I've always particularly had an affinity for the Mariners pitching development, which he does command-wise, I think is so much fun. I think that Brian Wu's ascendance towards ace, even if he's not facing the Yankees this week, has been really fun and exciting to watch. So I think it should be, if nothing else, for Yankees fans, really fun baseball to watch between two good teams. And so I think long term, it's April. I wouldn't read too much into, the results of this one individual series, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw these two teams in the ALCS come October. And what was the second part?
It was wait, I think didn't you answer both
I hit
of them?
both.
Yeah.
Good.
It was how do you think the teams stack up and what conclusion should people draw from the results of this series?
I think the Yankees, without a doubt, have a better offense than
Yeah.
Seattle. Seattle's improved on offense, but the Yankees should be among the favorites to lead the American League in runs scored, even if there were no big boppers added to last year's already large lineup.
Yeah. Max Fried, Logan Gilbert, and Cam Schlittler, George Kirby are two really fun pitching matchups.
They really are. And I feel like Max Fried, in like the national discourse of best pitchers in baseball, continues to not quite get enough shine. And I understand why, because he's not flashy in terms of strikeouts in the way that, your Scoobles are. And he's not quite on that level of like a Skeens, Scooble, probably even Crochet, but really impressive first season in pinstripes, and I think continues to sort of get underrated on a national level to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a playoffs thing with Max Fried as well, where even though he did shove against the Red Sox last year in his first playoff start as a Yankee, like I think people kind of hold that against him. But this guy has a 2.84 ERA, which leads baseball since 2021. And I absolutely agree that he is not being talked about like that. And yeah, I mean, he is he's not Crochet, he's not Scooble, but would it surprise you if he had, the third best pitching season in the American League? I don't think it would surprise me.
No, not in the
Yeah.
slightest.
Yeah. Good player, Max Fried. And even he's not even a FIP guy because he doesn't strike guys out, even not the way he did in 2019. He had a 3.07 FIP last year. He had 4.8 Fangraphs WAR. And this is just a good pitcher that we're talking about.
Yeah. No. Do I think that he'll ever win a Cy Young? Maybe not.
It would be tough.
Do I think he should be appreciated a little bit more as one of, I think, inarguably the 10 best pitchers in the game?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
At the end of the season, who are we going to regard as the best pitcher on the Yankees?
I would have a hard time giving any answer that's not Max Fried.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is a world in which Cam Schlittler could take that crown.
If he keeps not walking guys, which is something that in his last few starts, including the postseason, he's done in a really impressive way that kind of, you could imagine bringing your expectations for him way up. We could certainly see something special, but I agree with you. Cam Schlittler is the one guy who I think could take that mantle, but I think it would have to be Fried.
Yeah, and he's just got the strikeout upside that anybody else has. And so if the early gains in command that we've seen are real and sustainable, could be pretty cool.
It would be so cool, man. Yeah, he's fun. All right, Bob. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on this 171st edition of the Yankees Files podcast. I am certain that our listeners and followers are impressed with your ball knowledge and appreciate you stepping up to the proverbial plate to make this spot start. And now I've mixed my metaphors to co-host this podcast. You may or may not know that at the end of each podcast, my co-host and I rate our confidence out of 10 in these New York Yankees. And the confidence rating started almost as a joke because when Whipple and I were doing the podcast in 2021, we were so kind of, objective and took this long-term view of the season, and, our beliefs about the team wouldn't really change week to week. So it was kind of this funny thing that we could do where every week we would talk about our belief in the team based on the last 5 or 6 games that we had seen. And the beauty of the confidence rating is it doesn't mean anything. You will not be held to it. It doesn't translate to a number of wins or a number of rounds advanced in the playoffs or anything. It's just like a very arbitrary 1 to 10. How are you feeling about this team? So I'm going to ask you, I think we were all at a 9 on our season preview episode. I'm going to ask you, what is your level of confidence 1 to 10 in these New York Yankees?
Well, my initial thought was an 8, which is funny because if your alls was a 9 last week, I don't know how a 3-0 factors into me coming in with a lower number.
Well, it only has to mean something to you.
Yeah, perhaps I'm just more conservative in my ranking systems than consensus.
What do you think David Rucchio would give them?
Oh, he'd certainly give them a 5 because they no longer have Joe DiMaggio. I think Yankees fans have a lot of reasons to be encouraged. If you thought that last year's team was good, you should have no reason to believe that this year's team won't be good. By some measures, they were the best team in baseball last year. And they're probably going to be among the best teams in baseball again this year. I just think the division's a little bit more competitive than it was last year. So I think it's very likely we see the Yankees playing October baseball. And I think an 8 on March 30th, it's not even April yet. I think an 8 on March 30th reflects that.
Terrific. Bobby and I had this professor who would grade our essays out of 10, but you couldn't get a 0 through 4 or 0 through 5. So it was really like he was grading the essays out of 5, but he also wouldn't give anyone a 10. So it was like you could only get like a 7, 8, or 9. He was also a communist.
He was a time, but he loved the New York Yankees.
He did love the New York Yankees.
So
He
had
was
that for him.
He was an unusual guy. Bobby, I always ask the co-host for a parting shot or two, or however many you'd like, really. Is there anywhere people should find you or interact with you? Is there anything you'd like to encourage people to do? Is there any message you want to leave them with? Is there anyone you'd like to shout out? The floor is yours.
Wow, I hadn't prepared for this. This is a big moment. I'm not particularly active on social media, so I will not
Anymore.
plug you to follow me anywhere. Yeah, anymore. I'm formerly active on Twitter. And
You were a great tweeter.
Perhaps Will wishes I would come back.
I do.
But I would encourage you to watch a few Guardians games this year, and perhaps that will be enlightening and to why it's more fun to watch a team that hits the ball over the fence, because it's maddening baseball. Can be fun, and I love how much they've won in the AL Central, in the context of the AL Central in the past few years. But maybe appreciate being a Yankees fan a little bit more than you do. And with that, be kind to each other, and let's enjoy a great baseball season together, guys. It's the coming of spring. It's always a special time of year. I love the way my neighborhood here in Chicago feels once the Cubs are back. Something we shouldn't take for granted. Baseball season's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you, Bob. It was a pleasure to have you on the Yankees Files podcast. I hope we can do this again. We toyed with the idea of starting a baseball podcast years ago now in college, and I'm glad that we finally got to realize a sliver of that vision. And we'd love to have you back anytime you're interested in doing so. As I said, I really appreciate you stepping in and making this spot start in the place of Steve. People know they can find everything we do at YankeesFiles.com, where I recently deployed an app that I built in Claude Code, which was just kind of a cool thing. People know that they can follow us on Twitter, where we are at Yankees Files. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. We hope you'll rate, review, subscribe, and interact with it in positive ways if you enjoy it. We hope if you didn't enjoy it, you won't interact with it negatively, but you'll download it and play it a bunch of times on silent to juice our numbers. The full video podcast is available on Spotify, as well as on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@crosstownsports. We'll be back at a similar time from a different place next week, perhaps with a different co-host. And until then, let's go Yankees.
Thanks for having me, Will.
And I say, hey.